My name is Tara Simpson. I'm 66 years old, retired, and living alone in Riverside. My husband passed away young and I raised our daughter, Sylvia, on my own. Back then, I worked shifts at the local textile mill, round the clock, back-breaking labor that left my body worn out and aching in ways that never fully healed. Even after I retired, I didn't sit still. I scrubbed floors, took on odd jobs, did whatever it took to get by. Penny by penny, year by year, I clawed my way to a savings of $152,000. That money is my safety net. My secret weapon. It's the one thing standing between me and the unpredictable messiness of old age. My most loyal companion for the years ahead. I have only one daughter. She has her own life now, her own little family. And I have no intention of being a burden to her. None. So to me, that money isn't just a number in a bank account. It's my partner. My steady, silent other half. 3 years ago, my daughter Sylvia married Todd Miller. The newlyweds settled down not far from me in a place called Riverside Commons. The house was bought on a mortgage, and from what I could tell, the monthly payments were no small burden. Todd was charming. Always had a warm smile, always said the right things. Every time he came over, he'd bring gifts, sometimes more thoughtful than Sylvia ever managed. He treated me with a kind of sweetness that at times felt almost too good to be true. On weekends, he'd drop by to clean my windows or mop the floor. If a light bulb burned out or the faucet started leaking, one quick call and he'd show up in minutes, still smiling like he genuinely wanted to help. Watching the two of them laugh and live like a happy couple warmed me all over, like a sunbeam cutting through a cold winter morning. Sure, sometimes his eagerness felt a little extra. But I told myself, it's rare these days to see young people respecting their elders. That's a good thing. Sylvia had married well, and as her mother, I was truly happy for her. When they were short on cash, I'd quietly slip them a little money. Not much, just enough to help out. But when it came to the bigger bucks, I never let my guard down. Not once. All I wanted was a quiet, secure retirement. A peaceful old age. My daughter happy, my savings intact, no need to rely on anyone and no risk of becoming anyone's problem. That was the plan. But over the past few months, something started to feel off. Todd was stopping by more often than usual. Still smiling, still helpful, but his warmth had changed. There was something new beneath it. He wasn't just popping in for chit-chat anymore. He'd drop little comments here and there, trying to sound casual. Tara, is your pension enough to cover everything? You used to work at that big old textile factory, right? Must have been able to save up a bit. Heard you're doing some investing too? He always made it sound like idle curiosity, but his eyes were scanning me, like he was running the numbers in his head, estimating my worth. At first I brushed it off. Figured he was just being thoughtful. But when it kept happening again and again, I started to hear the questions beneath the questions, and they made my stomach tighten. Then came the sighs. The casual complaints. He'd tell me how he and his brother Kevin were planning to start some direct-to-consumer organic farm business. Said it was a golden opportunity, just needed a little seed money to get going. Other times he'd moan about how small the house was. Said they were thinking about having kids and they really needed a bigger place. But the down payment? It was like a mountain crushing him. Let's call it what it is, he wanted me to pay. That's when I got cautious. It wasn't that I was stingy. I just couldn't stand the sneaky way he was going about it. If he wanted to start a business, I could respect that. But even real brothers settle things with clear terms. So what makes him think I'd just fork over my life savings like it's no big deal? I've worked too damn hard for that money. So I smiled, played along, and deflected with vague answers. Oh, my little pension covers groceries and bills just fine. No leftover cash for investing or anything fancy like that. I think it's great you're thinking about building something, but business takes patience. You've got to take it step by step. Can't just dive in head first. I've never once mentioned exactly how much I've saved. Always kept it fuzzy. Because here's the truth. You can't read hearts just by looking at faces. Even if he's my son-in-law, I've learned to keep my cards close. Not because I'm petty, but because in this world money turns people ugly faster than you'd believe. I have to protect what's mine. My quiet, loyal companion. Sylvia brought it up a couple of times, said Todd was feeling the pressure lately. Said he wanted to prove himself, build something on his own. Mom, that project Todd's been talking about with his brother. It actually sounds kind of promising. Do you think maybe you could help a little? Her voice was soft, her eyes wouldn't meet mine. The second she said it, I knew. Todd had been working on her, feeding her the pitch. My daughter, bless her, she's kind to a fault. She loves with her whole heart and she trusts Todd like he hung the moon. I sighed, took her hand and said gently, Sylvia, starting a business isn't a game. It's not that I don't want to support you both, but this money, this is my retirement. If it all goes south, what do I do? Have Todd get a steady job first. Let him save up. When he's built up some capital of his own, then we'll talk. If I can help, I will. She didn't argue, but I could see the flicker of disappointment in her eyes. And just like that, the whole thing planted itself like a tiny thorn under my skin. Not sharp enough to scream, but just enough to sting over and over again. That weekend, Sylvia said they were coming over for dinner. I set the table with all their favorite dishes. Took my time with every detail. The roast was perfect, the salad crisp, and the wine breathing on the counter. I wanted it to feel like home. At dinner, Todd was more attentive than usual. Overly so. He kept refilling my glass, checking in on how I was feeling, even swapped out my old wine glass for a brand new one he brought with him. Tara, he said, flashing that practiced smile under the warm dining room lights. I know you love your red wine, so I picked up a new glass set for you. Last time I was here, I noticed yours were looking a little worn. He kept raising his glass to toast me, clinking it against mine with exaggerated cheer and knocking back drink after drink. His cheeks flushed fast, his words got just a touch slurred, but I knew better. Todd could hold his liquor. This was theater. By the time the wine was halfway down the bottle and the plates had been picked clean, he set his glass down and leaned in, eyes glassy with something that wasn't quite alcohol. Tara, he drawled, voice a little too smooth, a little too slow. There's something I've been meaning to tell you. I sat back in my chair watching him carefully. I knew that tone. Something was coming. Go ahead, I said, calm and steady. Sylvia keeps telling me you've only got a little bit of money saved for retirement. But I don't buy it. His body leaned toward me, his voice dropped low, but his words carried an unsettling certainty. You've worked your whole life. No way you only have that little. Come on, can't you just be straight with me? How much do you really have saved? He paused, then rushed to wave his hands like he'd stepped on a landmine. No, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to pry, really. I worry about you. There are so many scams out there, and what if you're keeping your money somewhere unsafe? Or someone tricks you into handing it over? If you told me the exact number, maybe I could help you manage it better, you know? His voice was full of concern. But behind his eyes I caught something sharper. Something calculating. He was fishing and not even hiding the bait. Sylvia reached out and tugged gently on his arm. Todd, you've had too much to drink. Let's not. But Todd shook her off, his voice rising just enough to make the room feel tighter. I'm fine. I'm just worried about Tara, that's all. Drunk talk? Please. This was rehearsed. He'd waited for the wine to loosen the mood, then went in for the ask. All right, Todd. You want to play? This old lady's got a few cards of her own. I let out a long, weary sigh, lacing my voice with just the right amount of hesitation, with a hint of wounded softness. I looked at him with a forced smile. Todd, you're my son-in-law. That makes you practically my own son. Since you asked. I won't lie. I paused for effect, dropped my voice to a near whisper and added a slight tremble to the words. I've scraped and saved all my life. And all I've got to show for it is about $20,000. I raised 2 fingers in the air, slow and deliberate, and let it drift down like a falling leaf. My gaze fell to the table, my tone turning quiet and dim. That's it. I don't touch that money unless I have to. We older folks, we don't think about growing, just surviving. Just peace of mind. As I spoke, I kept one eye on him, studying every twitch, every flicker. And when I said 20,000, it landed like a slap. His eyes froze. His pupils tightened. There it was, that tiny flash of disappointment, sharp and unmistakable, like a ripple spreading across still water. He tried to cover it with a chuckle, but that beat of awkward silence? I caught it. 20? He repeated like he needed to hear it again. Maybe to believe it. He forced out a couple of dry laughs and nodded like it didn't matter. Well, that's not bad at all. Tara, you really ought to keep that safe. Lots of shady folks out there looking to take advantage. His voice had gone soft, vague. His warmth drained away like someone had pulled the plug. And just like that, the room felt a little colder. The rest of dinner was strange. Todd grew quiet. He barely touched his food, just pushed it around his plate like he was doing math in his head, running the numbers, no doubt realizing how far short 20,000 would fall. Afterward, he said his phone was dying and asked if he could charge it in my bedroom. Sylvia was in the kitchen doing the dishes. That left me alone in the living room, the TV humming in the background with some late-night talk show, voices clashing with canned laughter. Todd slipped into the bedroom, the door almost, but not quite, closing behind him, leaving a narrow crack. Something in me stiffened. A sharp little instinct, old but never dull, tapped at the back of my mind. Something's not right. I set down the remote, stood up quietly and tiptoed toward the bedroom. No creaking floorboards. No sudden moves. I held my breath and leaned just close enough to hear. His voice was low, almost a whisper, but I caught it. "Kev?" "Yeah." I asked. Pause. He was listening. "She says she's only got 20. There was frustration. He was trying to keep his voice low, but it was soaked in disappointment. Like someone who'd opened a treasure chest only to find it filled with rocks. "Yeah, she's sticking to it." "Same thing Sylvia said." Another pause. "That plan of ours. It's probably not gonna happen." Said. "Then, fine, I get it. What else can we do? Just put it on hold. We'll talk later." The line went dead. Silence settled like dust. Only the soft, mechanical hum of the air conditioner remained. I stood there frozen. Cold sweat crawled down my back. My fingers tingled with adrenaline. The chill rose from my feet and ran straight to the base of my skull. Plan? Not gonna happen as expected? So that was it. The charm, the thoughtful gifts, the housework, the warm smiles. None of it had been real. Todd wasn't helping out of kindness. He wasn't checking in because he cared. He was casing the joint. All that sweetness had just been camouflage. In their heads, my savings, my $152,000, had already been counted, divided, maybe even spent. They were just waiting for the handoff. Only instead of the full pot, I dropped a decoy, 20 grand. And just like that, their little scheme unraveled. It hit me like a gut punch. Pulled. Heavy. Paralyzing. I drew in a breath, slow and deep, forcing myself to stay calm. I walked back to the couch, picked up the remote, pretended to flip channels. On screen, the flickering blue of the TV danced across my face. But my eyes, they weren't watching anymore. They were locked in the middle of a storm. Todd came out of the bedroom a few minutes later. His face was pale, jaw tight, and there was a shadow in his eyes he couldn't quite shake off. But the moment he saw me, he plastered on a smile. A weak, forced thing that looked more like a grimace than anything else. "Tara, I think we'll head out. You should get some rest." Sylvia had just come out of the kitchen, drying her hands on a towel. He glanced up, confused. "Already? Why not stay a little longer?" No, Todd said quickly, tugging at her arm. "We've got an early morning." He practically dragged her toward the door. I saw it then, the rush to leave, the escape in his posture. I walked them out, closed the door behind them, and returned to the silence of the living room. Only the television spoke now, echoing through the empty space, its flickering blue glow pulsing across the walls like a heartbeat. I sat down and let my thoughts spool out like film, the phone call replaying in my mind again and again. Todd's voice. His words. Every strange behavior in the last few weeks flashing like snapshots in a montage. The prying questions about my finances. The sighs, the stress, the stories about needing money. The fake drunkenness, hoping I'd let my guard down. The crushing disappointment when he heard 20. And worst of all, that one sentence that echoed like a warning bell. "That plan of ours. It's probably not gonna happen." It all clicked. Every gesture. Every smile. Every word. And then just for a second, a terrifying thought. What if I'd told him the truth? What if I had said the real number? What would they have done next? I shivered, drew in a breath so deep it hurt, and forced the fear back down. I couldn't afford to panic. I couldn't afford to blow up, to cry, to confront. That would only spook them, make them retreat, regroup, and come back with something more subtle, more dangerous. No. I needed to stay calm. Stay ahead. I had to find out exactly what their plan was. Then I had to protect my money. All of it. After I told Todd how much I had in savings, something in him shifted. It wasn't subtle. In fact, it was almost comical. He still smiled when we saw each other, sure, but that smile had changed. It wasn't warm anymore. It had all the charm of a receptionist trained to be polite. distant, thin, and utterly devoid of feeling. The handyman routine vanished too. No more weekend visits. No more offers to fix the leaky faucet or replace a bulb. And most telling of all, he never once brought up money again. It was as if that dinner, that quiet little interrogation, had never happened. As if the 20 grand I fed him had been a slip of the tongue or something he'd misheard. But I knew better. I knew it wasn't over. Not with Todd. Not with Kevin. Those two brothers weren't the quitting type. Sure enough, it didn't take long for them to change tactics. Todd stopped showing up alone. Instead, he started bringing Kevin around more and more. On the surface, they were just stopping by for dinner, or keeping me company. But I knew what they were really doing, trying to get the information they couldn't squeeze out of me the first time. They were just switching angles. Kevin was younger than Todd by a few years. Didn't have his brother's clean-cut look, but he more than made up for it with charm. From the moment he walked in the door, it was, "Hi, Aunt Tara." Warm, familiar, casual. His eyes darted around like he was scanning every corner, every cue, his mouth running a mile a minute. He had that slippery kind of energy people sometimes call clever. But that kind of clever always puts my skin on edge. He was never idle either. He'd jump up to help Todd rub my shoulders, or plant himself right next to me on the couch, talking non-stop. He'd ask about everything, what I ate, where I shopped, which neighbor's dog I liked. "Aunt Tara, this place is so neat. You've got such a good routine living alone. What kind of stuff do you usually cook? Maybe I'll whip something up and bring it over next time. This neighborhood seems quiet, safe, right? You don't get nervous being alone at night." I smiled, played the gracious host, answered every question with practiced ease, like I hadn't already seen through their game. But inside, every warning light I had was blazing red. I felt like an old fox curled up on her couch, watching two slick little weasels walk through the door with fake smiles and twitching noses, sniffing around trying to size up the meat in the den. I started noticing things. Subtle things. The looks they'd exchange when they thought I wasn't watching. Those little flashes of silent understanding. Like two schoolboys cooking up a scheme hell-bent on making it work this time. They'd excuse themselves, step out onto the balcony to smoke, or wander off one after the other to use the restroom. But their voices, their timing, the way they avoided my eyes before they left the room, it was obvious. They were sneaking off to talk. Plotting. They'd tried the solo act. Now they were going for the buddy routine. What, did they think the old lady was easy to fool just because she smiled and made them dinner? "Let's see what you've got, boys." One afternoon they put on a full performance in my living room. A two-man play. Kevin lit up like a kid on Christmas morning. "So Todd and I have been working on this vertical farming project," he said, eyes shining with over-rehearsed excitement. "It's super low-cost, high-yield, totally sustainable, plus it's local, community-supported. We've got the whole thing mapped out. Just need to get it off the ground." Todd played the quiet, thoughtful partner. "The real shame," he added, voice heavy with regret, "is we're short on startup funds. Otherwise this would be a no-brainer." Kevin jumped in again, smooth as ever. "Right. It'd be such a loss to miss the window. Aunt Tara, what do you think?" And there it was, the ball lobbed neatly into my court. Kevin's eyes sparkled, hungry, like he was waiting for the jackpot numbers to drop. I took a long, slow sip of tea. Let the silence stretch just enough. Set the cup down with a soft thunk on the table. "Well," I said, voice calm, face unreadable, "it does sound promising." They both leaned in. "But you know what they say," I added, keeping my tone flat. "The sweeter the pitch, the more careful you have to be. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Every investment comes with risk. And chasing fast money usually ends up with empty hands." The moment I finished, the light in Kevin's eyes flickered. Todd's mouth twitched, barely, but I saw it. That tiny little crack in the mask. "Thought you could charm it out of me? Try again. That money? Not yours. Not ever." That route, they tried to take it head-on. I shut it down. Hard. When the charm offensive didn't work, Todd pivoted. He stopped coming at me directly and started working his way in through Sylvia. The slow boil strategy. The whispered doubts. The guilt trips, soft and steady as a leaky faucet. "Babe, I'm under so much pressure. I can't keep doing this job forever. There's no future in it. I need to build something of my own. I don't have the money to get started. You know my buddy Daniel? His father-in-law invested in his food truck. Now the guy's killing it. I'm not asking for much, just a little faith. Your mom has money. She could help. Why won't she? I'm your husband. Doesn't that make me family too? That kind of talk, spoon-fed in soft tones and tired eyes, seeped into Sylvia like warm water around a frog. Not loud. Not forceful. Just persistent. And Sylvia, my sweet loyal girl, she's got the softest heart I know. She believed in him. Still does. She saw him as hardworking, ambitious, a man trying to build something better. Little by little, Todd drew her deeper into his web. He started visiting me more often. Always helpful, always kind, but something in her eyes had changed. There was a weight behind her glances, something she couldn't quite say aloud. Until the day she finally did. She'd just finished trimming vegetables, still in her apron, sitting on a kitchen stool with her hands nervously twisting the fabric's hem. Mom. Yes, sweetheart. I answered gently, though my gut already knew where this was headed. Just. Todd's been under a lot of stress lately. His brother's project. It actually sounds kind of promising. She looked up at me, eyes darting away almost instantly, like she couldn't bear to meet mine. I was just thinking, you know that 20,000, could you maybe lend a little? Just to help them get started? Todd said it's only temporary. As soon as they turn a profit, he'll pay you back. He even promised interest. There was. I knew it would come eventually. But my heart didn't ache for the money. It ached for her. My daughter, my flesh and blood, was being turned into a bridge. Not a partner in a dream, not a business ally. A pawn. A piece in a game she didn't even know she was playing. I looked at her and felt something prick sharp inside me. Not anger. Pain. I couldn't blow it up. Not now. I couldn't rip the blindfold from her eyes and destroy her faith in her husband all at once. That would only shatter her, maybe even her marriage. So I swallowed the heat in my chest and kept my voice calm, warm, measured. Sylvia, I said softly, locking eyes with her, it's not that I don't want to help. But you have to understand, that money, it's my safety net. It's all I've got. I paused, let the silence weigh down the moment, then continued, firm but not cold. Business is never a sure thing. What if this project fails? If that money disappears, what happens to me? Who's going to cover my bills? My future? You and Todd? Can you really afford that? He went still. My words landed. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. She knew the answer. Of course she did. They could barely handle their mortgage, let alone another human's living expenses. Mom, she murmured, her voice catching in her throat. I know it hasn't been easy for you. I want to help Todd, that's all. I lifted a hand and gently cut her off, letting a little more gravity seep into my tone. Sylvia, it's good for a man to want to build something. But it has to come from his strength. From work. From effort. When you build on someone else's sacrifice, especially by pressuring your own mother, you might get the money but you won't get far. Because that kind of money, it carries weight. And it won't carry him. That hit. She looked up at me stunned, like I'd just slapped her with truth she didn't want but couldn't ignore. Mom, how could you say that about Todd? He's not like that. I held her gaze and sighed, heavy and slow. Are you sure? I asked quietly. Think about how he's been acting lately. The way he asks. The timing. The pressure. You really haven't noticed anything off? She didn't answer. She couldn't. My daughter. My baby. The center of my world, and now the very thing tearing me apart. She thought she was protecting love. But she didn't see how Todd had used her. As a messenger, a battering ram, the final key to unlock my defenses. When she finally stood up, eyes red and shining, the air between us was thick with heat and hurt. She left without looking back, walking faster than usual. She was angry. And worse, she was wounded. I didn't follow. Because I knew, the wall rising between us, brick by bitter brick, wasn't hers. It was Todd's. And now that his path through Sylvia had failed, and my 2000 seemed more real than ever, he went quiet again. The visits slowed. The smiles faded. But I didn't feel relief. Because I knew him. Men like Todd don't quit. They regroup. He was waiting. Planning. Watching for a crack in the armor. So I made a decision. If he was waiting to make his next move, then maybe it was time I made mine first. That afternoon I set the bait. I'd printed out a fake investment brochure from the library. A tidy little piece of fiction titled Community Organic Garden Partnership Program. Right at the top in bold red pen I'd circled the key line. Initial investment, $5,000. Projected return, 12 to 14%. I placed it under the lamp in the center of the dining table, in the exact spot where sunlight hit the wood just right. Then I moved to the kitchen and started fussing with a bowl of fruit, just as Todd stepped through the front door. I'd left my old phone nearby, already dialed into a conversation on speaker. Well, I'm telling you I can maybe scrape together $5,000, but that's pushing it. I need to hold on to the rest for medical expenses someday. You're the one who said it's low risk and stable returns. I don't know though. That's a quarter of everything I've got, makes me nervous. Out of the corner of my eye, I watched Todd pause in the entryway, still halfway through taking off his shoes. His gaze went straight to the table. Locked on the paper. He froze for half a second, then kept moving like nothing had happened. I hung up, turned with a gasp and feigned surprise. Goodness, Todd, you startled me. When did you get here? He shrugged with that practiced little grin. Just walked in. Tara, I couldn't help overhearing. Did I hear you say you're thinking about investing? I placed the phone down casually. Yeah, a friend recommended it. Some sort of community project. Sounds interesting. I mean, I only have $20,000 in savings, so $5's the most I could risk. Just playing around, really. He glanced at the paper again, trying to keep his tone light. You're really considering it? Is it legit? I pretended to hesitate. I haven't made up my mind. Honestly, the amount's so small they're not exactly jumping to let me in. I figured I'd get a second opinion from someone younger, more financially savvy. Todd's lips twitched. His eyes, though, those gave him away. They lit up. You know, he said, pulling a stool closer, it's great that you're even thinking about investing. But if you're serious about doing something smart with your money, why not consider our farm project? At least it's being run by family. You know, we'd never steer you wrong. I picked up my tea, smiling as I blew across the surface. Oh, honey, I said softly, when it is family, the knife goes in a little deeper. That's what makes it sting. He blinked just for a moment and the smile faltered. Tara, you're hilarious, he said, forcing a chuckle. I sipped the tea. These days, even blood brothers keep accounts straight. So a son-in-law, well, I think you see my point. He didn't answer. Just stared at the fruit bowl, his mind clearly running 100 miles a minute. And sure enough, the very next day Kevin showed up. His smile was brighter than usual. Too bright, and he didn't even wait for his coat to come off before launching in. Aunt Tara. Todd told me you're looking into a community farm investment too? That's amazing, we're in the same space. I raised an eyebrow, lips curling at the edges, but I played it warm. You two are starting to finish each other's sentences. He grinned and clapped Todd on the back. That's called great brotherhood. And hey, family should look out for each other, right? We were thinking, maybe you'd consider putting that investment into our project instead? Minimum is $10,000. I gave a long, practiced sigh. You boys know I only have 20 total. Exactly. Kevin beamed. Start with 10. Just try it. Once it pays off, you can always add more later. I gave them a polite smile, no more. No agreement. No commitment. Just silence. But in my heart I knew they'd bitten. Todd and Kevin's energy kicked up a notch after that. More visits, more charm, more effort. I could almost see the dollar signs spinning in their heads. But that wasn't what troubled me most. It was Sylvia. She started dropping by more frequently too. Said she just wanted to check in, but something about her felt off. She wasn't relaxed like she used to be. Her smiles were thinner, her movements a little too careful. Like someone trying to act normal while hiding a splinter. She'd walk in and glance around like the room might be hiding secrets. Her eyes wouldn't settle. Her mouth would twitch like she had something to say but kept swallowing it. I didn't call her on it. Not yet. I just poured her a cup of her favorite jasmine tea, sweetened with a touch of honey, and smiled like I didn't notice a thing. But inside, I was watching, waiting, listening. She sat at the kitchen bar that day, quietly stirring her tea with the little string from the bag, eyes down, lips sealed. I sat across from her, flipping through a stack of grocery circulars like it was any other afternoon. But the air between us, heavy. Like something was crouched on the countertop, waiting. I didn't rush her. Just let the silence stretch. Let her sit in it until she was the one who needed to break it. It took a few minutes, but finally she lifted her head and spoke, careful, tentative. Mom, are you thinking about investing in that project your friend told you about? I didn't even look up. Didn't say I was. Just reading through the materials, seeing what it's about. Supposedly stable returns, but I haven't decided yet. Still thinking. She nodded, took a small sip of tea, then after a beat asked, Are you planning to use all 20,000 for it? Now I looked at her. Dead on. My stare caught her off guard. She flinched like a kid caught sneaking cookies. Her eyes darted away, her voice dropped even lower. I didn't mean anything by it. Todd just mentioned it, said maybe you were leaning toward investing and we worry. We don't want you to get scammed. That tone. I knew it. Not hers. That was Todd's script, word for word. I sighed, soft, slow, and let my voice go gentle but not without weight. Sylvia, I appreciate you worrying about me. Really I do. But what I don't understand is, why is your husband so eager to know how much money I have? She opened her mouth, then closed it again. No answer. I leaned in just a little. Last time he came over, I casually mentioned looking at some investment materials. Next day, his brother's at my door with a whole sales pitch, asking me to fund their project. You don't find that timing a little too convenient? Still nothing. But her silence said more than she realized. I saw it in her face, the hesitation, the tension, the tug-of-war happening behind her eyes. So I softened again. I couldn't press too hard, not yet. She was already fraying at the edges. You're my daughter, I said quietly. I raised you on my own. I know your heart better than anyone. You're not trying to hurt me. You're just being pulled. He's said enough things often enough that now you're unsure. Her eyes welled up and she bit her lip. Mom, he's really under so much pressure. I know you don't trust him, but he's not a bad person. I didn't argue. Just set my teacup down gently. I never said he was a bad person, I said calmly. But I am wondering if he sees me as family. She froze. Kept going. Soft voice, steady hands, not 1 inch of anger, but every word hitting exactly where it needed to land. If he saw me as a mother, he wouldn't be eyeing my retirement money like it's a lottery ticket. And if he really loved you, he wouldn't be using you to get to me. The room went still. That last line hit like a hammer in a velvet glove. Sylvia lowered her head. No more protest. No more defense. He understood. She just didn't want to admit it yet. But I'd planted the seed. And that seed? It would grow. She left a little while later, eyes red, no goodbye, just walked out the door and didn't look back. I stood there in the kitchen, alone, her face still flickering in front of me like a candle about to go out. It hurt. Of course it did. But I knew better than to let that hurt cloud me now. This wasn't the time to be soft. As I rinsed out the cups, dried them, and placed them carefully back in the cabinet, a thought took hold, sharp and sudden. I need proof. Real solid proof. Not for her. Not even for me. For what comes next. When you get to the point where you're locking your own doors against people who share your dinner table, the warmth's long gone. But cold doesn't mean careless. I pulled out my old phone from the drawer. Scuffed screen. Cracked corner. But when I tapped the voice memos app, it still worked. Grainy, yes. But it would pick up a conversation behind a closed door. And sometimes that's all you need. It was time to stop defending and start recording. For the next few days, I lived as if nothing had happened. Cooked, cleaned, took my walks, fed the birds like I always did. But I was watching. And sure enough, Todd and Kevin started coming around more often again. But this time their tempo had changed. They stopped pushing. Stopped pitching. Instead they played the long game. Kevin showed up one afternoon with a brown paper bag full of cookies. Hand-baked, he said, from some friend's boutique bakery. If our farm thing really takes off, maybe we can bring you in as a partner, he winked. I smiled. You boys really don't need to keep thinking about me. I don't exactly have the means to bankroll anyone. Kevin grinned back. Still, Aunt Tara, you deserve to feel included. You've got taste. And every venture needs someone with a little class. Included. Plus. No, sweetheart, you mean liable. You mean on the hook. I let the comment pass. Then when the two of them went into the kitchen to help me move some boxes, I slipped my old phone under the flowerpot base near the dining table. Perfect angle, good range. They didn't notice. And when they came back to sit down, they got comfortable fast. That's when the masks dropped. $2,000? You believe that? Kevin scoffed, voice low. She's sharp. No way she told the truth. Stick to the plan, Todd muttered. Have Sylvia go back again, just act more desperate. Really sell the stress. She'll cave. Soon as the cash hits, I'll move it into my name. We have to move before she backpedals. The old lady panics easy. Any hesitation and she's out. Then came the line that made my blood run cold. Honestly, if one day she just didn't wake up, wouldn't that be easier? The money goes to Sylvia anyway. Laughter. Quiet, nervous. You ever notice? The older they are, the more afraid they are of confrontation, of being alone. Makes them easy. Every single word caught on tape. That busted up phone, God bless it, recorded it all. The next morning I clipped the worst of the audio and sent it to an old friend, retired now, but she used to work as a legal clerk over in the county office. She messaged back a few minutes later with just one line. Be careful. Desperate men do reckless things. That night I pulled out my old bank statements, my will, and a handful of notarized documents, packed them into a folder and locked it in the wooden chest under my bed. I moved the key to a new hiding place. A better one. I wasn't worried they'd try to steal anything. They weren't that bold. I was worried they'd trick me. A signature. A form I didn't fully read. A temporary authorization that suddenly became something permanent. Because these days, people don't break into your home to rob you. They walk in through the front door, smile, and convince you to hand it over yourself. That old wooden chest? It's everything. The last firewall between me and ruin. I stood at the bedroom doorway that night staring at it, thinking, this is it. This box holds the sum of my life's work. And now it's bait. The day they came back, the sky was heavy, gray clouds pressing low, tree branches outside scraping the windows like nervous fingers. The wind had that unsettled feel, like something was about to break. I sat at the table, flipping through the same old community organic garden brochure. It was showtime. They'd said they were coming by to drop off new product samples from their farm and maybe chat a bit more about investment options. I left the brochure wide open, underlined in red. If family input is required, consult before investing. My recorder was already in place, buried in an empty tea tin on the lowest shelf of the bookcase. The doorbell rang. I didn't even look up. Todd entered first, all fake sunshine. Tara, low pressure today. Hope your head's not acting up? I'm fine, I said, tone flat. Just reviewing some project materials. Kevin followed, chipper as ever, holding a paper bag. Homemade onion bacon cookies today. My own recipe. Tell me what you think. I took the bag without a glance. Thanks. They sat down. Exchanged a glance. I caught it and pretended I didn't. I sighed like someone reluctantly softening. I've been thinking, I said. Your project. Maybe it's not as risky as I thought. Todd's eyes flicked up. Kevin's lit like Christmas morning. But, I continued evenly, I can't commit much. I'd only be able to put in 10,000. No more. The air tensed. Just for a second. Kevin recovered first. His smile was a little too eager. 10's great. You don't have to do more right away. Once it starts paying out, you can always build from there. Todd nodded quickly. Exactly. Tara, this isn't about money. It's about bringing you in as a partner. First tier, part of the family. I sipped my coffee. You boys know my situation. That 10,000 is my rope. If something goes wrong, I don't get a do-over. Kevin's fingers tapped the table, betraying the adrenaline under that grin. Trust us. We won't let you down. No, I thought. You'll just sign my name on something I didn't read and transfer what's left into your startup. I wasn't born yesterday. I nodded slowly and began gathering up the brochure. Here's what I'm thinking. Why don't you come back next week? I'll have my friend look over the contract. She's a retired attorney. Good with wording. Kevin blinked. Todd froze, just a hair. But I caught it. What? Kevin said. You want her to review the contract? I smiled, sweet as sugar. Of course. I'd never sign something blind. I'd lose sleep. At that moment, the TV in the background piped up, perfectly timed. Before investing, always verify the identity of all parties involved. I clicked the remote and turned off the screen. Looked right at them. Exactly, I said. They didn't speak. That day's fishing expedition? It had gone sideways for them. All I did was mention a lawyer and suddenly their confidence cracked like a dropped teacup. And now I'd seen it all. The fear in their eyes, the flicker of panic when things didn't go as planned, the desperation just under the surface. They were out in the open now, swimming near the boat. All that was left was for me to decide when to reel them in. That Saturday the sky was heavy again, gray as wet ash. The living room was dim, shadows pooling in the corners. Wind slipped through the cracks in the windows, making the curtains balloon and sway like lungs filled with unease. I didn't turn on the lights. Just boiled a pot of black tea. Let it steep while the house stayed quiet. Right after I fished the tea bag out, the door creaked open. Sylvia stepped in alone. No Todd. He carried a grocery bag with a carton of milk peeking out the top. Just in the neighborhood, she said. Casual. Almost too casual. Her words were light, but her steps were slow, weighted with something she wasn't ready to name. I nodded, said nothing, kept flipping through the TV guide. But my eyes tracked her from the side. There were dark circles under hers. The corners of her mouth were tight. Like she hadn't slept or had cried more than once this week. She sat down on the edge of the couch, hands folded too neatly as if holding herself together. Mom, she said finally, her voice almost a whisper, I've been feeling off, like something's not right. Are you hiding something from me? I paused. Let the question hang there. Then I looked up and met her eyes. You want the truth? I asked quietly. She nodded, barely. As if afraid the truth might break her. I didn't say anything. Just stood, walked over to the side drawer and pulled out my old phone. Its screen was scratched. Its battery barely held. But today was enough. I unlocked it, opened the voice memos app, tapped play. I set it gently on the coffee table between us. The audio started playing. Todd's voice came through first, clear and low. Kevin followed, just as familiar. You do it just like I told you. Get Sylvia to ask again. Make it sound real, like you're really falling apart. We've got to hit her before she locks up. The old witch gets emotional, she'll back off. Pause. Then Kevin's voice again, darker this time, almost laughing. Honestly, if she drops dead in her sleep, it's even better. Sylvia inherits everything. Then the final nail. Come on, old people. They're scared of everything. Conflict, loneliness, offending anyone. Makes them easy targets. Then silence. Then Kevin laughing. Sylvia shot to her feet. It was like she'd been struck, violently, invisibly. Her whole body locked up, her skin drained of color, her lips quivering. He said, if you just died it would make things easier, she whispered, her voice cracking like glass. I didn't answer. Just held her gaze. She opened her mouth like she wanted to speak, then closed it again. Her hands started to shake. Her face cycled through it all. Shock, confusion, disbelief. Then the full, sharp fall into heartbreak. He was acting. All this time. She wasn't talking to me anymore. She was saying it to herself, trying to make it real. Even me, he used me? I still didn't nod. Didn't shake my head. Just let out a long, quiet breath. She crumpled back onto the sofa like a balloon someone had let go of. I thought he was just panicked. That he just wanted to build something for us. I thought. She choked on her own breath. But he joked about you dying. She began to cry. Not loud sobs. This wasn't the kind of pain that screamed. It was the quiet kind. The kind that made people turn away. She turned from me, covered her face with her hands, her shoulders trembling under the weight of it. I pulled a tissue from the box and passed it to her. No words. Just the paper. You're my daughter, I said softly. You trusted the wrong man. I'll never blame you for that. But now, you need to be clear-eyed. No more letting him use you as a shield. She nodded slowly, still hunched forward, her breath catching in little hiccups. But the tears started to slow. Her spine began to straighten. Then she looked at me, voice still rough but steady enough to ask. Mom, what do we do now? I looked back at her. And in that moment I knew, she had heard the truth. Not because I told her. Not because I warned her. But because she'd heard it herself. His voice, his plan, his cruelty. Now finally she was awake. The day they came back, the weather betrayed them, bright and cloudless as if the sky itself hadn't gotten the memo. Kevin, still clinging to his routine, walked in with a box of his so-called artisan baked goods. Todd followed behind, dressed in that same gray wool cardigan he always wore when he wanted to look casual but respectable. His smile was fixed, his eyes flicking toward the hallway cabinet, right where I used to keep my medicine and bank books. I didn't greet them with warmth. Just motioned for them to sit. On the table, waiting in perfect silence, sat a single cup of black coffee and one crisp document. The printed transcript of their recorded conversation. The paper lay neatly on the lace tablecloth, its edges sharp under the soft afternoon light. Kevin barely hit the seat before launching into his sales pitch. "Aunt Tara, we really polished the proposal this time. You mentioned your friend, the one who could look over contracts. We actually prepped a draft for her." I raised a hand. "We're not discussing the project today." My voice was slow, steady. "Today we're going to talk about your plan." Todd's jaw clenched. His eyes darted down to the table. Kevin's grin froze mid-sentence. "Plan?" he asked, trying for casual, already failing. "I don't know what you mean." I slid the document across the table. "The last time you were here," I said, "I had an old phone tucked under the flower pot. It picked up some interesting material." Todd's eyes locked on the page. The blood drained from his face like someone had flipped a switch. Kevin leaned over, still faking confusion. "What is this?" "We don't." I didn't look at him. I read, voice steady as stone. "As soon as the money hits, I'll transfer it under my name. If she doesn't wake up one day, it's easier. Sylvia inherits everything. Old people are scared of hassle, of being alone, of confrontation, makes them easy to fool." Silence. Thick. Unforgiving. Kevin's face twitched. He opened his mouth, desperate now. "That was a joke, Tara. Come on. A misunderstanding." I turned my eyes on him. Unflinching. "You were betting I'm old. That I'm stupid. That I'll die soon and save you the paperwork. Isn't that right?" Todd said nothing. His face had gone pale gray. Every lie, every play, they'd all unraveled, thread by thread, right here under my roof. I turned to him, my voice calm, like I was discussing market trends. "Do you have any idea what I went through to raise Sylvia on my own? Do you even understand what the word sacrifice means? You want to start a business? Fine. But you thought my death would make things easier. My life savings were never yours to skim. And if you saw me as a hurdle instead of a human being, then let me be clear. This hurdle isn't going anywhere. I've still got years left in me." Todd's lips parted. "Tara, you're taking this all wrong." "I'm not," I said, cutting him off. "I've already notified the bank. All large transfers are frozen unless personally approved. I updated the trust. My lawyer was here on Wednesday. Not a dime goes to anyone who isn't blood." Then I turned to Kevin. "If I see you near this house again, I will call the police." Kevin shot to his feet, face flaming, voice cracking. "You're paranoid. This is all in your head." I didn't blink. "The recording you heard isn't the only one. I have the full version, including the part where you and Todd discussed how to wear me down." He went quiet, stared for 2 seconds, then spun around and slammed the door on his way out. Todd stood there still, expressionless, like the truth had knocked the wind out of him, but pride wouldn't let him show it. I looked at him, straight through him, and when I spoke, my voice dropped, low and final. "You were never my son. You were my daughter's husband, and for that I gave you the respect the title deserved. But as of today, that title earns you nothing from me." He lowered his head, shoulders drooping. Then he muttered, hoarse and bitter, "Sylvia's going to regret this." I looked at him, unflinching. "No. What she regrets," I said quietly, "is not seeing through you sooner." He didn't say another word. Just turned and walked out, eyes burning, fists tight, every ounce of pretense stripped away. I watched him leave. Not with hate. Not even with anger. Just a cold, clear sense of closure. And the quiet knowledge that, for the first time in this long game, the table had turned. 3 days after Todd walked out, Sylvia came back, with nothing but a suitcase and silence. No tears. No dramatic declarations. She rolled her luggage to the entryway, set it down, and walked straight into the kitchen like she'd never left. She pulled out a bunch of spinach and started sorting the leaves, hands moving with quiet purpose. I didn't ask what she'd decided. I knew she'd tell me when she was ready. That evening, over dinner, she finally spoke. "Mom," she said, her voice steady, "I sold the house. I moved out. I've got a short-term rental lined up, but before I go there, I want to stay with you for a while. Is that okay? I nodded. If you've made your choice, that's enough for me. She hesitated for a moment, then added, I ended things. He tried to talk me into staying, but I couldn't even look him in the eyes. I looked up at her. My voice was soft, but it didn't waver. You weren't holding on to him, Sylvia. You were holding on to who you thought he was. Her lips pressed together. She nodded faintly. I thought, if I stood by him, if I carried the weight with him, even if he didn't have much to give back, it would mean something. But I didn't even know the ugliest part of him was hiding right under the surface. I reached across the table and took her hand, gave it a gentle squeeze. What breaks us, I said quietly, isn't poverty or bad luck or even failure. It's giving someone your trust and watching them treat it like a weakness. Sylvia didn't say anything, just nodded again. But in her eyes I saw it, that quiet, painful clarity of someone who's finally awake. After dinner, I handed her a small document folder. Something I'd kept tucked away for years. Your father left these before he passed, I said. It's not money, just notes. Ideas. Plans. He made mistakes. He dreamed too big sometimes. But he never lied to me. Not once. She took the folder with a small tremble in her hand, her fingers curling around the paper like it was something fragile and sacred. You loved, I told her. That's not your crime. The only one at fault is the man who took that love and used it. That night we sat out on the balcony. We didn't say much. Just listened to the wind brushing through the trees in the courtyard below. Leaves rustling like whispers, like stories too old to tell out loud. She didn't cry. But I knew without a doubt, this time she was done. A few weeks later I signed up for a pottery class at the community center. I also picked up a volunteer form. Something about helping with the garden behind the building. You're not exactly young anymore, the administrator chuckled. I smiled right back. I spent my younger years saving money. Now I'm finally allowed to play in the dirt. Outside the sun was warm just the way I liked it. I walked home with a canvas tote on my shoulder, passing a group of kids kicking a ball across the sidewalk. I stopped for a moment just to watch. Couldn't help the smile that crept up on me. When I opened the door, Sylvia was in the living room organizing hangers. She glanced up, hair tucked behind one ear, and gave me a tired but genuine smile. Mom, what did you do today? I held up the tote. Made a mug. Or tried to. Turned into an ashtray somewhere along the way. We both laughed. Sometimes you think you're getting old. But really you're just finally starting to see people for who they are. Getting older doesn't mean retreating from life's battlefield. It means switching battlefields. And fighting for yourself. I didn't give my retirement money to anyone. But I gave myself something better. A sense of peace. I wasn't fooled. I wasn't broken. And most importantly, I was still holding the reins of my own life. That right there? That was the real inheritance.